Regular Groudon in Scarlet and Violet is not Primal Groudon, no Desolate Land, no extra 100 stat points, just Drought, 150 attack, and a signature move that misses 1 in 6 times. That's the version we're fixing today. 3 levels of buffs. Level 1 is conservative and completely justifiable. Level 2 makes it genuinely threatening. Level 3 is broken in a way that's extremely fun to think about. Everything stacks, so by level 3 you're looking at the full picture. Before the buffs, let's be precise about what's actually wrong, because Groudon's problems are more specific than people give them credit for. 150 base attack and 140 base defense are legitimate numbers. The physical bulk and offensive ceiling are real. But 90 special defense means a modest Kyogre water spout at full health is doing enormous damage even with Drought active, which is a frustrating vulnerability for something that's supposed to be one of the premier weather setters in the game. 90 speed is the other problem. In formats without Tailwind support, Groudon is getting outsped by a long list of things it would prefer to move before. And then there's Precipice Blades. Precipice Blades is 120 base power, ground-type stab, Groudon's signature move, and it sits at 85% accuracy. Stone Edge is 80% accuracy, and people complain about that constantly. Precipice Blades has 85% accuracy and no secondary effect, no additional damage, nothing to compensate for the unreliability. In VGC, where individual turns decide entire games, missing your signature move 1 in 6 times is not a small problem. Earthquake does the same base damage at 100% accuracy, and the only reason you wouldn't run it is the spread damage in doubles. So the choice is either hit your own partner or accept a meaningful miss rate on the move your entire offensive game plan is built around. That's the baseline we're working from. Level 1. 2 changes. First, Precipice Blades goes to 90% accuracy. That's it. That's the whole change. This is the single most obviously correct buff in this entire series. It's Groudon's signature move. Bumping it from 85 to 90% does not break anything in any format. It just makes the move feel like it was designed with intention rather than arbitrarily penalized. A 120 base power move at 90% accuracy is still less reliable than Earthquake. It's still a trade-off. It's just a trade-off that doesn't feel punishing to commit to. Second, Groudon gets access to Burning Jealousy. This is a 70 base power fire type special move that burns any target that raised their stats in the same turn. Groudon already learns Fire Punch and Lava Plume, so the thematic connection to fire type moves is already established in its learn set. The reason I want this specifically is that Groudon currently has no answer to things like Swords Dance, Zacian-C, or opposing Dragon Dance users without committing to a full special set, which nobody is realistically running on a Pokémon with 150 base attack. Burning Jealousy gives it a targeted response to setup sweepers in matchups, where Groudon would otherwise just have to accept being bypassed. You're not spamming this move. You're using it once in a specific situation where it matters. That's exactly the kind of low-cost utility addition that a level 1 buff should be doing. Level 2. Dragon Dance. Everything from level 1 carries forward. Now we're giving Groudon Dragon Dance, and this is where the threat profile changes in a meaningful way. 90 speed is the ceiling on Groudon's offensive game plan in any format where it can't rely on speed control support. Landorus T, which gets compared to Groudon constantly as a physical ground-type attacker, has access to both Rock Polish and Swords Dance, depending on what the team needs. Groudon gets Swords Dance, which is fine, but it has nothing in the speed department. Dragon Dance solves that. At +1, Groudon is sitting at 135 speed and 225 attack. That is a genuinely threatening number that still has accessible checks. Faster priority moves, bulky special attackers that can hit it before the boost, but requires teams to account for it in a way they currently don't need to when they see a regular Groudon in Team Preview. The set that becomes competitive at level 2 is Dragon Dance into Precipice Blades at 90% accuracy, Heat Crash for grass-type coverage, Rock Slide for spread damage in doubles. That's a real moveset with a real game plan attached to it. The main checks remain bulky water types, and anything carrying water-type priority, which means the team building around Groudon still needs to address those weaknesses directly. But forcing that conversation is a different situation than what regular Groudon is creating in the current metagame. I want to spend a moment on Heat Crash specifically, because it's genuinely underrated in Groudon's current kit, even without any buff supplied. Groudon weighs 950 kilograms. That means Heat Crash, against anything that isn't equally massive, is hitting at or near its maximum base power output, which caps at 120. A drought-boosted Heat Crash off 150 base attack is not a comfortable number for anything in a relevant weight range. Amoonguss, which is one of the most common comfortable switch-ins to ground-type stab moves, is getting hit by a sun-boosted 120 base power fire move off one of the highest attack stats in the game. More people building sun teams and defensive structures around them should be accounting for this. It's not a fringe situation. It comes up constantly, and the damage output surprises people every time. Dragonite, Salamence, Gyarados, Haxorus, Kammo, all of them learn Dragon Dance. The thematic argument against Groudon having it is essentially non-existent. It's a massive reptilian Earth Titan, and the move is already distributed widely across the reptilian and draconic Pokémon in the game. There's no strong case against it. Level 3, Desolate Land. In games where Primal Reversion is unavailable, regular Groudon gets Desolate Land as its primary ability instead of Drought. The distinction between Drought and Desolate Land is not a small one. Drought boosts Fire-type moves and weakens Water-type moves. Desolate Land makes Water-type moves have no effect at all while Groudon is on the field. That single characteristic is the defining feature of what makes Primal Groudon so uniquely oppressive in Uber's formats. One of the most consistent problems with running regular Groudon in Scarlet and Violet was that Pelipper Rain teams could just flip the weather and then freely threaten Groudon with Water-type moves it had no way to mitigate. Desolate Land closes that entirely. Rain doesn't flip Desolate Land. Water moves don't land while it's active. The entire matchup against Rain teams shifts from unfavorable to structurally unwinnable for the Rain side. Combined with Dragon Dance from level 2 and Precipice Blades at 90% accuracy from level 1, this version of Groudon creates a situation that teams genuinely aren't equipped to handle without dedicated preparation. At +1 speed and attack under Desolate Land, the list of Pokémon that can switch in safely and survive a Precipice Blades or Heat Crash is extremely short. The checks that do exist, faster priority like Talonflame's Brave Bird, Ice Shard from Weevil, special attackers that can hit it before it sets up, are real and functional. But forcing teams to carry multiple specific answers to a Pokémon that isn't even in its primal form is a power-level conversation that goes well beyond anything currently happening in standard formats. The version of this that becomes genuinely absurd is thinking about what this stacked Groudon looks like if Primal Reversion is then accessible on top of everything in a format that allows both. Desolate Land already active before Primal stacks onto it. Dragon Dance in the Learn set. 180 base attack at +1 after Dragon Dance. That number is extremely funny to say out loud. There's no realistic pathway for this in any actual game. But the compounding nature of it is exactly what makes the level 3 thought experiment worth running through, because it illustrates precisely why each individual change feels reasonable in isolation, while the full stack creates something that has no business existing in a competitive environment. The counterplay at level 3 still exists, but it requires specific answers that have to be in place before the game starts. Faster priority users, dedicated special attackers with ice coverage, Pokémon bulky enough on the special side to absorb a hit and respond. All of that works. The problem is that in formats with Team Preview, opponents now have to look at a regular Groudon and build around the assumption that it might have Desolate Land, Dragon Dance, and a cleaned-up Precipice Blades, which changes how roster construction works at a fundamental level, even in games where Groudon never actually sets up. That's what separates a Pokémon that's merely strong from one that's genuinely broken. It's not the win rate in games where everything goes according to plan. It's the cost it imposes on every opposing team.